When you go to large events, lots of times it's the speakers you go to hear and it's the lessons that you remember, but sometimes you remember things that weren't intended to be taught at the time. I remember sitting at Pepperdine last year and the song leader got up to lead singing one morning and he said this: "If the church were half the church it sings about, we'd be unstoppable." And I couldn't stop thinking about that statement. If the church were half the church we sung about, we would be unstoppable. Let me just grab a hymn book here, if I can find one real quick, and just make my point real quickly. You flip through the hymn book. Think about some of the things that we sing. Think about some of the things we say. We sing things like, "If Jesus goes with me, I'll go anywhere." I've sung that song since I was a little kid. I've sung that song probably 100 times. If Jesus goes with me, I'll go anywhere. Is that true? Really? If you got an idea that maybe you ought to move to China tomorrow, what would you say? Right? I'm not sure that that's always quite as true as we'd like it to be. How about something else like, "Be not dismayed, whatever betide," Old English, means do not worry no matter what happens. Is that who we are? Really? Really? Because I've got lots of people in my office worrying most weeks. And yet we sit here and say, "I'm not worried. It's going to be all right." Flip through it some more. How about one that says, "Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee." Take my life. It's yours. I don't have any concern about it. I don't want anything for me. Really? Is that who we really are? How about a newer song that says, "I am mine no more. I've been bought with blood. I am mine no more." Really? Is that who we really are? Deep down, is that who we are? How about one other one? "All to Jesus I surrender." All, everything. What do I have? All to Jesus I surrender. Those are the songs we sing. Those are the hymns we say. And this song leader said, you know what, if we were half that, if we were half those words most of the time, we'd be unstoppable. Because we sing a lot of really important ideas. We sing a lot of really true stuff. And yet, I don't know about you, I'll speak personally, that's not who I am all the time. That's not what I act like a lot of the time. I'm not just ready to give everything up. I'm not ready just to go anywhere. I'm not ready just to say, I don't care what happens to me as long as the gospel advances. And yet that's kind of how I sing. That's kind of how I talk here. But deep down, is that really who I am? Is that really who you are? If it's not, then there's a question to be asked. And the question is, why not? What's missing? What's holding me back from saying, you know what? I'm ready to give up anything as long as the gospel's advanced. I'll do anything as long as something good happens. I'll give up everything I have as long as something positive is going on. If that's not happening, what's missing? I don't think it's a desire. I think if you went around the room and said, do you want the church to grow? Everybody would say, of course. If you went around the room and said, would you like your friends to be baptized? People would say, of course. If you went around the room and said, would you support this? People would say, of course. I don't think it's desire. I don't think it's ability. I don't think if you went around this room, there's not anyone in this room, even as I look at it right now, I don't think there's anyone here who doesn't have the ability to teach someone else, or to share, or to make something good happen. I think in some way, every one of you has the ability to do that. So I think we've got more than enough Bible knowledge. I think we've got more than enough resources. I think we've got more than enough ability to say, let's do whatever it is God wants us to do, but yet we're holding back for some reason. There's still something missing. I don't think it's ability. I don't think it's power. I think we have the power to do so. We have the Holy Spirit in us if we are baptized believers. We have the inspired Word of God. We've got prayer. I don't think we're missing the power to see something positive happen in our community. I don't think that's what we're missing. I think there's still something else that's not quite there that needs to be there. And it's something that the Hebrew writer, when he wrote to his friends, saw in them as well. He saw something that was lacking, something that had changed in them, something that wasn't quite right, not as it was at the start. And he describes what's missing in Hebrews chapter 10. He describes what needs to change in Hebrews chapter 10. And I'm not prescribing this to you, but I'm asking you, is this true of you as well? Does this need to change in you? Because it probably does in me. Hebrews chapter 10, we're going to start reading at verse 32. In verse 32, the Hebrew writer writes to this group of Christians, and he says, remember who you used to be, because something has changed. Remember who you used to be, because something's not quite the way it used to be. Here's what he says. Remember those earlier days after you received the light? It's a nice way of saying, remember those early days when you became a Christian? Those first few days after your baptism, the first few days when you were really excited for what God was doing in your life, remember that? The Hebrew writer knows them well enough, he remembers how they were. So he describes them to themselves. He says, remember those early days after you received the light, when you stood your ground in a great contest in the face of suffering. He says, you know what, you guys, after you became Christians, you suffered a lot of stuff. And you know what you did? You stood your ground. You didn't run away. You didn't compromise. You didn't think about yourself. You didn't put your own priorities first. You actually stood up. You actually defended what you believed. You actually were all in. You did really well. He says, in the face of that suffering, you did really well. I'm so proud of who you used to be. Keyword used to be. He goes on to explain some of the things that happened to them. And as I read this, I think this is amazing. Because again, this doesn't sound much like me most of the time. Listen to what he says. Verse 33. Sometimes you were publicly exposed to insult and persecution. You know, you may have experienced a little bit of that over your lifetime. You may have had somebody, as I said in Bible class this morning, sneer at the fact that you're a Christian, call you a goody two-shoes, make fun of the fact that you go to church or something. Most of us have never really been persecuted for being a Christian, though, right? I mean, somebody's given us a weird look, but that's not really the same thing as actually being publicly persecuted. But these guys have been. These guys had been taken up and publicly persecuted and insulted. They'd been pointed out as transgressors, as evil people because of what they believed in their community. They were totally embarrassed by the people around them because of what they believed. He said, you did that. That happened, and you stood strong. Way to go. That's one thing that happened to them. He goes on and he says, you were exposed to insult and persecution. At other times, you stood side by side with those who were so treated. That's kind of interesting, too. He says, not only were you pulled out of the crowd sometimes and made fun of, but you guys were brave enough that you went and stood with those who were being persecuted. You could have hidden the crowd. You could have just cowered. You could have said, oh, I hope they don't find me. They found him, so I hope they don't find me. That's not what you did. You said, hey, there's one of my brothers being persecuted. You know what? I'm going to go stand with him. You want to persecute him? You're going to have to do me too. You're going to treat him poorly? You got to treat me poorly too. I won't let him go through this alone. You used to do stuff like that, he said. That's what you did. Now remember that. Verse 34, it gets worse. You sympathized with those in prison. So there's a possibility there too that they would have been imprisoned. Christians all over the world have had that happen to them for years, right? You know that. Just because we don't experience that doesn't mean it's not true. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen today. The fact that we get to sit here today and there's not one person who's going to come through here and arrest us and take us to jail for what we're doing is an anomaly, really. Down through the centuries, Christians have been thrown in jail for being Christian. And he says, you sympathized with those guys. You went and looked after them. When Paul was in prison, he had several people who would come and find him and look after him, even though that put them at risk as well. He said, good for you. You didn't leave your brothers rotting in prison. You actually went and identified with them and went to the jail guard and said, I want to talk to that guy you have who's arrested, who's a Christian, because I am too. That took some guts, but you did it. The next one to me is the hardest one to read. The next one to me is the most shocking one. It says, you sympathized with those in prison and joyfully accepted the confiscation of your property. We read a lot of things in the Bible and we just read right over them and don't even think about it. But think about that for a moment. You visited those in prison and you joyfully accepted the confiscation of your property. How many of you could do that? Somebody comes in right now and says, I'm taking your truck because you're a Christian. Would that bother you? Somebody comes in right now and says, give me the keys to your house. It's not yours anymore. Because you don't believe the way I believe. You're out of your house. I'm moving somebody else into it today. You're on the street. How would you react? He says these guys joyfully accepted that. Whatever, you take my house, I don't care. You joyfully accepted that. Why? You joyfully accepted that because you knew that you yourselves had better and lasting possessions. We are so focused on things right now, right? We are so focused on material things that it seems crazy for us to give it up for something. But these guys were. They were giving up what they had because they had something better. They were giving up their physical stuff because they had spiritual blessings. They literally did say, empty my bank account as long as the church grows. That's what they said. Have at it. Take it all. I don't care. Which one of us is there? Which one of us would do that? How many of you would walk home today, leave your car here so I could sell it and spread the gospel? How many are you there? Right? That's not me. I'm pretty tied to the things that I have. There's some things I'd give away and not think much about. There's some other things you'd have to pretty much fight me to get out of my hands. But he says, you guys used to do that all the time. You joyfully did it. You joyfully gave stuff up. You didn't care about material things. As long as the gospel was growing, that's who you used to be. That's how we sing, isn't it? Anywhere with Jesus. That's what we say. But it's not necessarily who I am. He says, you gave all those things up because you yourselves had better lasting possessions. He says, that's what I remember about you. Then verse 35, he tries to encourage them. And he says, okay, that's who you used to be when you were first baptized. That's how you used to act. That's how you were. I love those guys. So now he says, here's what I want to tell you, verse 35. He says, so do not throw away your confidence. It seems like they've changed. It seems like they've forgotten their better possessions. It seems like they've forgotten to stand up with each other. It seems like they are hiding a little bit now. It seems like they aren't standing up with their brothers in prisons. He says, don't forget that. Don't forget your confidence, verse 35. Don't throw that away, because it'll be richly rewarded. You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what he has promised. The concern is that they do the will of God, not look after themselves. They've changed. That's the change that has happened. They used to be concerned about God's will. Now they're concerned about themselves. So he said, I want you to go back to doing the will of God and receiving what he has promised. Verse 37. For in a very little while, he who is coming will come and will not delay. But my righteous one will live by faith. And if he shrinks back, I will not be pleased in him. It says Christ is coming, and if you're going to live well for him, you're going to have to live by faith. You're going to have to not be so focused on what you have. You're going to have to trust something bigger. That's his little sermon to them. You used to be brave. You're not so brave anymore. Don't shrink back, he says in verse 37. Don't be like that, verse 38. You've got to stand up. Here's the verse I want you to remember for the rest of the week. Verse 39 is the part I want you to think about, because he says, really, when it comes down to it, we only have two options. There are only two options to look at. He says, I don't want you to shrink away. I want you to receive the power of Christ. Verse 39. But we are not those who shrink back and are destroyed, but those who believe and are saved. I want to spend the next 5 minutes just talking about this part. This is the heart of the thing. He says something has changed in you. You used to be brave, now you're scared. You used to stand up, now you're not. You used to gladly give everything you had, now you're holding on to everything really tightly. He says, hang on a second, you've made a bad choice. There are only two options according to verse 39, and here they are. Number one, you can shrink back. You can run away, but that's going to destroy you. That's his warning. He says if you live by fear, if you hold back, if you shrink back, if you run away, if you refuse to get involved, then you will be destroyed. It's going to fall apart. Nothing good is going to come out of that. It is an option, but nothing good is going to come out of that option. It's not going to be any good. Because here's the thing, it's fear-based. And as I said in Bible study, nothing spiritual is fear-based. Nothing spiritual is created out of fear. Fear is a horrible motivator. Fear makes us make bad decisions. Fear makes us choose the wrong thing. And he says, you guys are acting fearful and it's going to kill you. Because when you're always thinking you're going to do something wrong, you're never going to do anything. If you're always thinking about what could go bad, you're not going to start. If you're always thinking about what you're going to lose, you're never going to gain. Fear is the thing that stops us. Fear is the thing that keeps us from doing all the good things that we want to do. Fear is the thing that keeps us from doing anything positive. When I was in junior high and high school, I played basketball. I was the guy who, on the basketball team, when they throw the ball in, I was the guy who dribbled the ball up the court. Typically, the guy who has the ball all the time, the guard, is the guy who shoots the ball. I typically would have been the guy who would carry the ball down the court and take shots. Guess how many times I shot the ball when I was the guard playing basketball? Guess how much I shot? I shot almost 0 times. And you know why I shot almost no times? I almost always passed the ball to somebody else. Do you know why I almost always passed the ball? Because I was scared of missing the shot. I was scared that if I went down and took a shot and I missed, my coach would be mad at me. And my other teammates would be mad at me. So you know what I did? I just never shot. I always passed the ball. I made Dennis take the shot, or I made Russ take the shot. I made Larry take the shot. Then if they missed, it was their problem. I did never take the shot because I was scared that I was going to miss. But guess what? If I don't take the shot, I've missed anyway. Right? If I've got a shot, if I could score, and I refuse because I'm too scared that I might miss, I've already missed. I've already lost. Fear kept me from doing something that was doable. Fear kept me from doing the thing I could have done. And I want to suggest to you that that's the case in the church. That's the case with these guys in Hebrews. That's the case with me most of the time, and I think it's the case with you. We sing, "All to Jesus I surrender," and I want to be like that. I really do. I really want to be devoted to God, but yet I'm scared to do it. I'm scared that if I don't have money in the bank, I'm going to starve to death because I don't really believe God's going to look after me. I'm scared that if I step out and talk to my neighbor, he's going to think I'm an idiot, so I don't do it. I'm scared that if I go out into this town and try and do something good, I'm going to do it wrong, and somebody's going to say, "You did that wrong, Tim." I'm scared if I stand up and teach a lesson, somebody's going to say, "You said something wrong," and sit down. By the way, that is the biggest fear, isn't it? People tell me all the time they don't want to teach class because they think somebody's going to pick it apart, tell them where they did it wrong. We're scared to get it wrong. We're scared to get it wrong, so we don't even try to get it right. Isn't that true? We're scared to get it wrong, so we don't even try to get it right. And so this man says to these readers, here's the problem. You can shrink back, but it'll kill you. You can shrink back and live in fear. It's going to kill you completely. You're going to die. You're going to be destroyed. It's not going to bring anything good. Fear never brings blessing. Here's the other side of it. Not only does fear not only bring blessing, but failure actually helps you. We're so scared to fail. We're so scared not to do it right. But failure is part of learning. Doing it wrong is how you learn to do it right. So by being scared to do it wrong, we rob ourselves from the chance to learn how to do it better. And so then we do nothing. A guy named John Ortberg once said, failure is an indispensable, irreplaceable part of learning and growth. Only when we put ourselves into a position to fail will we grow. And so I want to suggest, I'm not pointing fingers, but I want to suggest that the church has been so scared. Church members across the prairies have been so scared to get it wrong that we've never put ourselves in a place to grow, and so we've never grown. We're so scared to do it wrong. I'm so scared to talk to my neighbor. I think I'm going to get it wrong that I never ever do it. Well, here's the truth. If I went and talked to my neighbor and he didn't really sound all that excited, I could probably try again some other time and do it better. I don't get just one shot. But unless I try, I'm never going to get better at it. Unless I try, I'm never going to figure out what works. Unless I try... The picture is of an Edison bulb, of course. Thomas Edison said, I didn't fail 100 times to make a light bulb. I found 100 ways that don't work. Failure is part of learning and growth. Don't let fear stop you from trying. If we shrink back, we will be destroyed. Fear is not a blessing. So again, we sometimes think, well, I tried that once and it didn't work, so I give up because I must be bad. I must not know how to do it. I must not have enough knowledge. None of that's true. You tried, and next time you do it, you'll do it better. That's all there is. The old painter, the old painter Vincent van Gogh, or if you're being really snobby, Vincent van Gogh. That's how the snobs pronounce it, the art snobs. He said one time, if you hear a voice within you that says, I cannot paint, then by all means paint. And that voice will be silenced. In other words, if you think you can't do something, go try. You probably will figure out how to do it. But in the church, we've been so scared to try. We're so scared to get it wrong. We're so scared to fail that we just sit there. The Hebrew writer says to these people, you used to be strong, now you're living in fear. That's going to kill you. So you've got two options. You can either live in fear, shrink back and be destroyed, or you can believe and be saved. The second option really is the only option. The first option doesn't even really exist because it's only leading to failure. So really, there is only one real option for those who are trying. This is who we are as believers. We are those who believe and are saved. We are the believers. We are the hopers. We are the trusters. We are the goers. We are the ones who say, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm going to try anyway because I believe God will use it somehow. That's who we are supposed to be. That's how we sing. That's what we say. We are the ones who are going out. We are not letting fear stop us because we're faithful. And that's the picture that he wants. He's saying, man, look at the things you can do. Look at the things you can do, not the things that you can't do. Look at the things you can do, not the things that didn't work out quite right. Look at what you can do. So when a little baby starts to learn to walk, what do? What do we do when a baby starts to walk? That baby toddles around and we giggle at it and we say, woohoo, you're toddling. And that baby goes, and falls backwards, and we pick that baby up and we say, woohoo, you walked 3 steps. Way to go. And we clap for the baby that takes 3 steps. We don't say, why were you so stupid to fall over? Can we give each other some grace? Can we give ourselves some grace? Can we say, man, you took 3 steps, way to go? Instead of saying, boy, why did you fall over there? We're the ones who say, yeah, you're taking some steps, you're learning to walk. Way to go. Way to go. Go do the good you can do. Go do whatever positive thing you can do. Stop letting fear hold you back. That's the message from the Hebrew writer to his people. Someone once said, nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. Isn't that true? You can do something. So go do your little bit. It may not be huge. It may not be really impressive. It may not change the world, but go do the little you can do. Why? Because that little bit makes a difference. And by doing that little bit, you learn to do a little bit more. Stop letting fear stop you. That's what the Hebrew writer says. We are not those who shrink back. We are those who believe. That's his last line to them. Brothers and sisters, who are you? Who are you? Not who do you sing like. Not what do you say in Bible class. Not what do you say when you're in this building. But who are you? Bottom line, who are you? Are you scared? Or are you faithful? Are you running away or running towards? Are you saying, let me try or I'll probably fail? Who are you? He says, we're not those who shrink back. We're not the scared ones. We believe. And that belief causes our salvation. That belief causes salvation for others. That belief brings God to people's lives. That belief causes us to go. That belief is the thing that changes us. Christian writer Bob Goff would say it this way. He likes to say, fail trying. Don't fail by watching. If you're going to fail, fail by trying. Don't fail watching. Don't fail just sitting around. If you're going to make a mistake, make it. And learn and get better. Because it's the only way you learn. If you go back to the start of Hebrews chapter 10, he said, or back to a little bit further in Hebrews 10, go back to the 19th verse. Just before all of this stuff where he starts talking to them about being fearful and not shrinking back. Look at verse 19. This is what he says to them prior to that. He says, therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place. Underline the word confident. They're not fearful, they're confident. Since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus. Not because they're so good, but because God is so good. Brothers, since we have this confidence to go into the holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way, open to us through the curtain, that is his body. And since we have a great high priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with sincere hearts in full assurance of faith. That's not fearful. Let us draw near. That's not fearful. That's confident. Let's believe what we've been given. Let's draw near to God. Let's be assured of our faith. Because we've had our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience, and we've had our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess. That's not fearful. Let's stand up wherever we need to stand up. Let's do the good we can do. Let's not run away, but let's hold unswervingly to the hope we profess. For he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on. Not stop and run in fear, but how can we help each other be better? How can we help spur each other on? How can we encourage something in each other? How can we say, instead of saying, Tim, that was the stupidest lesson I've ever heard, how can we say, thank you for trying, Tim? How can we turn our attitude, instead of looking at what we don't like to looking to what we do in our brothers and sisters. How can we do anything? He says, I want you to spur each other on to love and good deeds. Love and good deeds. You can do something. You can love people and you can do good. You can do that. Spur each other on to that. Let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encourage one another. And all the more as you see the day approaching. Something had changed in them from the time they were Christians to the time he's writing to them. What had changed is they had shrunk back. They'd become fearful. They'd started thinking about now instead of later. They'd started thinking about self-preservation instead of learning and growing. They'd stopped growing and they just ran away. He says, brothers and sisters, that's not who we are. We're not scared. We're those who go forward. We are those who believe and are saved. We're the ones who take some risks. And not everything works out. But because we're trying, something good happens. Brothers and sisters, come near to God because he is the one who can empower us. He is the one who can bless us. Brothers and sisters, we are not to be scared. We're to live by faith. Are you living what you sing? Let's stand and sing.